Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 274 for January 22nd, 2023. I'm your host, TowelMaster99. With me tonight, just one other of our co-hosts. Unfortunately, DBQ could not make it tonight. But I do have Mr. Hamp. Hamp, how's it going? How's your weekend?
Good, man. It has not been too bad. I've had a chance to get some gaming in, which we are absolutely about to talk about tonight, in addition to some of the industry news that's been going on for the week.
Up first, we will get to our main gamer experience stories. And I will hand it actually right back to you, Hamp. And you had a game that I'm kind of, I shouldn't say surprised, because you've played another one in this series. But I didn't realize you're going to get the newest of the Fire Emblems that just came out.
So I have had a brief couple of hours to take Fire Emblem Engage for its initial spin. It's been enjoyable, but and again, I'm only a couple of hours into the game, so I've definitely got more to play through and more to report back to bring back next week to talk about. Right off the jump, though, those first couple of hours of impressions, it is not lighting the fire that kind of Fire Emblem Three Houses did. And I think maybe that's just because Fire Emblem Three Houses just took me by such a surprise. I just didn't know that it was going to kind of have that Hogwarts feel to it. It was going to kind of have that yen for me back to my own college days. And so... it just hasn't done that for me yet. I have just gotten to the headquarters. I think some of the buzz that's out about Fire Emblem Engage leads you to believe that, or led me to believe that there wouldn't be kind of as much framework and kind of infrastructure as there was there in Fire Emblem Three Houses. But you do have like another kind of major base HQ that you go back to and kind of spend time at, just kind of like you did the Academy. I don't think that the paradigms are the same, just as far as managing, time management was such a big part of the Academy, and managing the timeline and how much progression you could get done during your downtime. So I haven't been through that loop yet. So we'll see, how that is. There were rumors and indications that you wouldn't have romance options, but I've seen more writing out there now that the game has dropped, that there are kind of sort of some relationship management things there in the game. Maybe not full on romance options, but But it'll definitely be a thing to kind of pull the thread on and explore. The combat so far is a little different than Fire Emblem Three Houses, where Three Houses was about, you had your hero types, but each of your hero types was in charge of an army, and so there was a matter of kind of there being troop numbers to be managed and attrition rates and things. This is just a straight up like it's the heroes, right, engaged in combat with enemy forces, some of which have regular kind of foot soldiers, but a lot of which are kind of more toe-to-toe combat with characters of similar ilk. You don't have as many kind of big enemy kind of boss, I think I used to call it like half bosses or mini bosses, right? You only have sort of one of those with each kind of flight of any enemy formation. So it feels like a slightly different paradigm, and again, that may just be a matter of what I've seen of the game so far. Artwork-wise, the game's beautiful. That's the thing that has leaped out at me, is I love the color palette and the backdrop canvases and the painting of the background scenes that has gone on. One aspect of the do loop, there's also a small post-mission area where after you do a fight, there's kind of sort of along the lines of like loot drops, just as far as currency and things that you can pick up, I assume, which you'll be able to use to expend for progression or item purchases or something like that when you're back in the HQ, which is called like the Selenium or something like that. But I am enjoying the story so far. There's a couple of characters that I've already kind of, where I've been kind of very interested in the characterization of those characters, and I expect that to go on. The game is supposedly pretty lengthy. It's supposed to be anywhere from 40 to 60 hours, just depending on, how much time you spend engaged in combat, and I'm not exactly certain exactly what the campaign versus side mission structure is. But there is enough there to kind of get yourself lost in it. I will definitely obviously be trying to figure out what is the main path through the game. And I haven't gotten a really firm sense for how varied the progression branches are, again, because I haven't really seen the progression branches yet, right? I've just engaged in the combat. So that to me will kind of be a big tell, right? Whether or not, the combat I always enjoy getting engaged in, but the other part that's going to be important to me is how much the characters kind of level up and skill up as they proceed on. But other than that, like the basic tactical do loop of managing, your strikes versus their counter strikes, I've had some really neat kind of initial combat nuances, right, beyond just the straight up, damage versus defense. There's one character that you get that has an ability called, I can't remember exactly what the ability is called, but what she has is she has the ability to, it's called chain block, I think is what it's called, which might be like a weird, interesting play on blockchain, which would just be a very interesting kind of humorous take that I wouldn't expect from Nintendo developers. But what you're able to do is you're able to position yourself, and if you put your team in a formation around her, in the blocks that she does this in, when she has full hit points, basically she is able to absorb any damage that would have been inflicted on another teammate. And so in one instance, it gets a pretty powerful character. When I engage, my cavalry character, which is right now the most powerful that you have with the party, that cavalry character actually starts off more powerful than kind of your main character. I was able to absorb the damage from this other character when she attacked, and then wound up countering with my cavalry knight, if you will, and actually winning that tactical encounter. So that even caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it to work out as well. The last thing that I think that I will mention is I'm still kind of working through the I don't know, I guess I want to call it kind of the hexanography, I guess, of the map. Meaning, in the Civilization series, it was a really big deal when in Civilization 5, I want to say it was, the map became hexagonal and you could attack in 6 different directions instead of just the 4, I think, that you'd always been able to. I think that's the way that series went. But I've encountered some weird instances where it didn't seem like I was able to attack in a diagonal direction, which is really bothersome. If that is the case, if you have to be, in one of the 4 cardinal directions to launch an attack, but I've seen that on some occasions, and I want to say I've had occasions where that did not appear to be the case. So we'll continue playing and figure whether or not that's actually a thing or not. But having a good time with it so far. Playing it on the Switch. I am playing it on the Switch OLED for whatever that's worth, but I am playing docked, using the Joy-Cons with the Joy-Con grip. Is actually how I'm playing that game this week. So pretty fun so far. It has a good amount of depth, it looks like, to get into. So I'm hoping that what I've seen so far continues to ramp up.
I have a few questions for you since you played Three Houses. Did you finish Three Houses? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I did not finish Three Houses. Three Houses is a game that you can play. It's a sandbox. You can play around in it kind of endlessly, and I didn't push through to try and kind of find the main line in that. So no, I didn't play it all the way through.
All right. And do you know, is this like a sequel to that game, or is it just kind of the next in the series?
I think it's the next in the series. It doesn't. I don't. And again, I'm not the greatest at lore, particularly Nintendo lore, particularly any of the Nintendo franchises lore. I don't think that these are any of the same characters. There may be instances where there are some, but the setup in this is that whatever kind of character you were a warrior engaged in this war with a great evil in the land, and one of the powers that this race of people has is an ability to recall past champions with rings, and the setup is very much kind of along the lines of the Rings of Power, so it's very Tolkien-esque. But basically, there's 12 rings, and each one of these rings has the capability to call a past hero. And whichever hero you have, you're armed with, they augment your abilities by some way. Now, I think the sense I get of it is that as you go on, you'll find other rings, and you'll be able to take different heroes to pair with you into combat. But because there are some, the game tells you that there are some kind of bonus buffs when you are using. That the more you use a certain hero, you develop an increased bond. And the only reason I think that there would be a reason for that would be to differentiate against like levels of bond. So I think as the game goes on, you'll be able to take out different characters. So, I think my sense of it is that you'll have characters that you'll be able to take out where another character might be more powerful, but your personal bond with them may not be that high. And then it's going to be interesting to see if, as you go on and you find these additional rings, if you are able to, if your NPCs in your party are able to use them, and then you'll be managing, the level of bond and affinity with different heroes amongst all of your different characters as well.
Do you create your character, or is it just like a character that they already had there?
Yeah, it's a stock character, so that. We'll talk a little bit tonight more about Knights of Honor 2, which is another strategy game that I've been playing. And we'll talk a little bit about how that makes a difference, just in kind of how I get stimulated and how I get, involved with the game. But you were asking if it was a continuation. Like I said, the sense of it is you had these set of rings, you were able to recall past heroes, you engaged in like the final climactic battle in this past war, and then you won the battle, but then you fell into a deep sleep for like 1,000 years. And so the game kind of picks up with you waking up, and and all of the people who are in your kind of immediate circle, right, are new people. So you're creating bonds with them. You're finding out a little bit more about the lore and the background of these people who have been taking care of you while you've been asleep for 1,000 years. And then, I was just joined by other friends of theirs. And I think as it goes on, maybe you will find old past friends of yours too. As you would imagine, this character has some partial amnesia, so there's going back and and finding all of your memories and putting those pieces back together as well.
And then it's similar art style to the Three Houses, or is it? Have they updated it at all, or was Three Houses kind of more cel shady, or kind of not really? I thought it kind of looked like it.
They're both kind of cel shaded, kind of anime ish. I do feel again, this may not be with absolute certainty. I feel like the color palette of Engage is a little brighter than Three Houses was. So for whatever that's worth.
Okay. And then you mentioned you were playing it docked. Is that on a TV or on a monitor? I only asked because I do notice, especially on I think probably the last game I played was just Pokemon. I played it on both TV and a monitor, and it seemed like my monitor, which is 1440, seemed to look a little bit better on there than on my 4K TV. So,
yeah, I mean, as I've mentioned over the life cycle of the Nintendo Switch, I personally feel like the Nintendo Switch looks horrible. You put it on a 4K TV. I actually think it does. It absolutely looks better on a computer monitor, and absolutely looks better. I think if you even get it down to a 1080p monitor, which I think on a 1440p monitor, I think it looks fine. Because I run my PCs, that is my primary resolution. Is 1440p. That's what I typically run my Switch on when I have it, on one of these studio stations for live streaming, etc. But yeah, nope. I'm just playing it on the TV. I had to kind of do a double take because I haven't played my Switch in a while, and it just always catches me off guard when I boot up the Switch and the information panel, which is up at the top of my television, comes up and says it's 1920 by 1080p, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Because everything I normally play and watch on the TV is normally 4K. Yeah. But despite that, it looks fine on a TV. It looks great. It's turn-based, so there's no notion of performance problems. Beautiful, gorgeous kind of animations, right? In terms of, character animations and combat animations. So there's been a lot of literature written that was a big emphasis of the teams. So that works really great. The thing that grates and grinds against me is, my predilection for not liking a lot of exposition and wanting to just get into the meat of a game and not liking going through that painful onboarding. But this is very painful onboarding. There's a lot of dialogue. I have thank goodness, good on you for the Fire Emblem team for implementing an auto dialogue forward functionality, so you don't have to sit there and keep hitting A. If you just let it go, the characters will kind of talk at a normal kind of movie script pace, and it'll be like sitting there watching a television show, and so that's good. The downside to that is it's kind of like sitting there watching a television show, right? That's not really moving at a particularly fast clip. And so, in 2 hours of those first 2 hours of gameplay, I've probably had, 3 to 5 tactical engagements, that have been of various lengths, relatively short, but it's been a lot of sitting there, right, listening to the dialogue.
Yeah, that was kind of the same issue with Pokemon. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, or Violet, because that's the one I have. It's pretty talky at the beginning there, and I think it was probably made it worse because the first few times I played it, I only had maybe an hour, probably not even that. So I'm trying to come on, let's just get to the battle so I can or pick my Pokemon and do all this other stuff. But yeah, it can be. Yeah, that kind of gets to me sometimes. It just depends. Like I said, I only had a short amount of time, so. But yeah,
this is definitely not a game to sit down with and try and squeeze in, right? This is the type of game that for me in the way that I play, I wouldn't dare bother sitting down to play this game unless I had a healthy 2 hour chunk of time ahead of me.
All right, cool. I don't think I've ever played a mainline Fire Emblem. I only tried the mobile Heroes, I think. Fire Emblem Heroes, which it was fine. I kind of enjoyed it, but think I mentioned in the past, I'm not, not as happiest, but it's not my thing with the turn-based style of the gameplay. So I don't know. I might give it another try when I eventually get Midnight Suns, 'cause that's obviously turn-based. So, and like I said, that might be a gateway game into that kind of style, kind of like Snap was for the card stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, uh, and I know I always hear good things about the series. It's just like, just I don't know. I like the kind of more, hey, let me just hit A and I do an action right away instead of like pick a stuff. Although I mean, to be honest, that's what Pokemon is technically. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just the cartoony nature of it, or just the fact that you're collecting all these different things. There's like all these different Pokemon with the different abilities and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe I could try another one someday.
Yeah, it is. It is not an action game. This is, I mean, the closest thing to this, and I feel this way about Engage even more so than Three Houses. Like this is a chess game. This is an anime chess game. It's moving your characters. It cuts much closer to the cloth in my mind to Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark. And I mean, I'm sure it's similar to Three Houses, but it feels like it's closer to Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark, and it feels like it's much more so, a big game of chess. I think that's interesting. I think what'll be interesting as I go on is, as I mentioned, that nuanced combat that I had at the outset is that it'll be interesting to see if the game opens up tactical directions and encourages you, right, and gives you good tactical reasons to play it in ways that are more than just, does this character do more damage than the other character? Like I said, as far as I can tell, that healer that I have, she has no offensive capability. So, it's important to kind of keep her close to the combatants, but then, eventually I'm also going to have the concern about whether or not, people target her. So, but it's been interesting so far, and I'm looking forward to more.
Yes. Now you had mentioned with Three Houses, you kind of picked that up, just because it kind of reminds you of back in the day in school and all that. Did the reason you picked up Engage was just because, well, okay, even though Three Houses, this is obviously a different setting, and there's no school, and it's just like, I guess like an army or something that's going on. Did you just get hooked kind of like on the Three Houses kind of gameplay, or like what made you get engaged that you decided to pick it up?
Um, so I picked up Three Houses, and I discovered the school stuff that resonated with me in terms of, what I fell in love with and what I liked about Harry Potter, which, I fell in love with and liked Harry Potter again because it was very similar to, my upbringing through school. But I didn't know that going into Three Houses. I just kind of stumbled across that, and it was like, heck, this is I hear a lot of tones and notes of Harry Potter in here. And then I was like, oh, and then the reason I like Harry Potter is because like, it's how I went to school. So Engage, but, I came to Fire Emblem originally on the 3DS. And what has always caused me to hearken to the series is the tactics, right? I'm one of the few people who liked Fallout Tactics, which isn't really necessarily absolutely turn-based, but I like those kind of squad-based, turn-based, like tactical strategy games, and always have. Swiss and I talked, I think last year or maybe the year before about, I can't remember exactly, Dungeon Encounters, which is a Square Enix game, which plays in very similar fashion to this. And of course I played Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark, a few years ago. And again, it's very much, kind of moving your chess pieces on the battlefield and orienting them and determining which ones you keep in close proximity to each other, so that they can buff each other. I mean, it's the same way kind of you approach XCOM. So I've always enjoyed games like that. The Fire Emblem series is a rare instance where a subgenre that I'm into is kind of wrapped in kind of Nintendo content speak. Because normally, I don't play Nintendo first-party games. and so my Switch has always been like a port machine. What PC port am I going to play so that I have that game in portable format? So Fire Emblem, is one of the rare ones that does resonate with me at my core of the type of gamer that I am. So, I was definitely down to play Engage, even if it didn't have, some of the kind of Hogwarts style stuff that the Three Houses does. And again, my jury on that is still out because I know previewers said that, but then I'm like, oh wait, you do have a big headquarters base that you can walk around in and like do stuff before you go, in between going to combat. So I'm gonna pull the thread and see how much of that there actually is, and see how much of the gaming journalist preview was kind of bupkis, or or meant something different than the way that they articulated it. But yeah, I was good chance I was always gonna play Engage, because of the turn based tactical style of it.
Before I jump into my game real quick, I just want to mention that. So I mentioned, I think last week, where I was kind of in this in between state now that I finished Pokemon, and this kind of always do this if I actually go through and play through a game, and especially with some of the Pokemon, because there's all kinds of, I was like hardcore into it, and I kind of just have to chill, and just kind of, I've gone back to just like playing Rocket League and Fortnite. That's honestly what I've mostly been playing this past week. But I have a couple of other games I'll talk about here in a second. But before I did that, I kind of like, every once in a while I'll go through the Game Pass, and I'll just kind of go down the line and pick games to play. And I jumped into Anvil Vault Breakers, which is a roguelite shooter, kind of like Vampire Survivors and those type of games. And I only played it for like maybe like 10 minutes or so, and I was like, I kind of liked it, but I don't think I was in the right mindset to play that type of game at that point. So I want to go back to it eventually, and give it another try. Just because I was playing it and I was like, I'm kind of liking it, but I was like, I don't know, something was just kind of off. I think it was just me, just because I was kind of near the end of my kind of gaming night that I was kind of winding down. And I didn't know what to play, and I had already played like Fortnite and Rocket League and all that other stuff, and but I felt like playing something else, but I didn't know what. So that's what I usually do, is I'll jump into Game Pass and try to look for something. So um, I do want to go back and give it a try. And it's in game preview right now for Game Pass. I was actually playing it through the cloud gaming, which it's kind of a nice kind of get like that rental kind of vibe when I do something like that through the Game Pass, and through the cloud is like. And then if I really enjoy something, I might actually just download it, just so it's a little bit better experience. Not that I've had like a terrible experience, but sometimes I just like to throw it on my hard drive and play it. So I want to go back to that. But what I have been playing this past week is World War Z Aftermath on PC on Steam. I've played it here and there last couple months. My friend pointed it to me. I think it was on sale last month that I got it. I picked it up on Steam, one of the Steam sales. And I got a little bit more playtime now. Finally, this past week, I played a few games, or a few nights, I should say, during the week, and then I was playing it the last couple days. We were playing it, so there is a co-op campaign that you kind of go through. But we've been doing the horde mode that you can do. So you said that's kind of like that's where you can get like the most experience to kind of level up your player, the character you choose. And there's a lot of characters you can choose from, maybe like 15 or so, maybe more than that. But and it's actually not really so much the characters, I guess, but you have different classes that you can do, and I think there's about 8 to 10 of those classes. So you can have any class on any character. So the characters really don't matter, like whoever character you can pick, and you can just pick whatever class for that character. So that's kind of nice, because that's probably why maybe they had so many characters, just because give you a nice variety. But we've been playing that, and so we've been playing. Actually, we've only been playing, I think, one of the maps so far. It's kind of this airport area. And it's kind of like split up into different countries, and I can't remember what country that we're supposed to be in, but you kind of get set. It's kind of a fairly large map, but you kind of have to concentrate on kind of areas, kind of go back and forth between like 2 or 3 different areas within that map. And you get like, maybe you kind of go through like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 different horde kind of coming at you, and then you kind of switch to the other area and kind of do that back and forth. And then eventually there's like this main gate that you have to defend. and that's kind of like near the end of the rounds. So I think the highest we got to was like 22, I believe, somewhere in the 20s, like the low 20s. Now I don't know if it keeps going after that because I had to leave, unfortunately. So maybe that would kind of finish it off when we're on that last. Maybe there's only like one or two more horde levels to go, but I had to go. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see if that actually finishes or if it just kind of keeps going until you just finally die. I'm not sure, but I have to ask him about that still. But it's kind of cool. Like you can set traps, and so in between each horde round, you can buy stuff so you can upgrade your weapon. You can buy health. There's like strategically placed oil barrels everywhere. So if you use them in a round, then you can buy them back for the next round. And they kind of like they don't explode, but they just kind of drop oil, and then you can set the oil on fire. So that's kind of cool. Just kind of slow them down. And there's like barbed wire and these electric traps you can put down. So it's kind of cool, and like machine gun turrets and stuff like that. So you have, and then, if you know World War Z, it's all about like it is all about the horde. Like these are not Walking Dead zombies. These are like fast moving, and there's like a ton of them on screen at a time at any given time. So it's kind of cool. Like, you just see these waves of zombies, and you're just like shooting mowing them down and stuff like that. So, and I think my friend has like kind of like an ammo ability where he puts on ammo that kind of like explosive rounds. So he can put a bunch of those down, and he can upgrade that. And, he starts off with like maybe one or two, and then you keep just throwing them down as much as you can. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. I was actually kind of getting into it, so might actually try to play it maybe tonight if I have some time. We do have to work tomorrow, unfortunately, so I can't stay up that late. And it does take a long time, though. So I think we had been playing like maybe an hour and a half, maybe almost 2 hours when we got to that level, the level 20 or so. So it does take quite a while. So I wanna jump back into it. Maybe play a couple other maps now to kind of get like how to what you do in between each round and stuff like that. So it'd be kind of nice to play a different map. So we definitely want to play that a little bit more. Probably play it more this couple of weeks. So, any questions or comments on that one?
Yeah, just kind of how does that game compare to Back for Blood? Just in terms of kind of the types of things that you look for in games, and the types of things that you think people would want in a progression system and things like that for a living game as a service type of game.
Yeah, I would say it's different because it's different in the horde mode at least because like I said, I haven't played the regular campaign mode with him yet, so I don't know if in the campaign if it's more like Back for Blood or Left 4 Dead where you're kind of like moving through like a level. Here you're just kind of set, like I said, you're kind of set in the one level, and you kind of move back and forth a little bit. It's not like super huge though, so it's not it's not like Back for Blood and all those other ones. It's a lot more simple as far as the progression. Like when you get the experience, you level up, and then you can unlock. There's like a skill tree, depending on the class. Like I'm an exterminator, so I start off just like Molotov cocktails, and then eventually I'll get. I think the next like big thing I get is what do they call those things? A mortar that I can put down, and I. So from what he was telling me, I can like just put down not as many as I can, but like a whole bunch of them, so that obviously help you out, during a round. So. But yeah, I'd say it's pretty different as far as the progression model. Obviously, there's no card system or anything like that. That seems to be pretty much it. Like as soon as you level up, you can unlock different stuff. And it's pretty simple. It's nothing too complicated. Kind of like in Back 4 Blood, I think is a little bit more involved because you got the cards that you have to like kind of fiddle with and mess around and depending on which card you want. So. It's definitely a different experience, but like I said, since I haven't played the regular campaign mode, I'm not sure. Maybe if that's kind of the same as like a normal Back 4 Blood or Left 4 Dead.
Does World War Z do because my thing about Back 4 Blood is game design is game design, and what's appealing to gamers from a game mechanics and game environmentals perspective is kind of one thing, but business models, right, and microtransactions and all that kind of stuff is another thing, and I tend to try and separate those two. That all being said, business models are a thing that you have to make a business go, right? And you can, as a gamer, decide, ones that grate up against, your sense of like what is right with the world, or you can just choose to not participate in them and play the game in a way that feels enjoyable, and not be subjected to, the whole business model thing. So, but the one thing I'll say about Back 4 Blood is, as interesting as of a game as that is, I never felt like it does anything to kind of compel you to purchase microtransactions. And while as a gamer, that may feel okay to me, as a person who looks at businesses as a use case, as a case study, I'm like, I don't know how you're making money on a game that's a live service game that you're releasing DLC for, when there's not anything that really incentivizes anyone to have to spend money. So, does World War Z do enough of that, or does this feel like, the game is the game and you're never going to see, much of anything new show up in it, but from a utilitarian perspective, it does what it needs to do? Or just kind of, where do you feel it lies with regards to business model and uptake?
Yeah, as far as I've seen, there's no like battle pass or any kind of store or anything like that within the game. I haven't really looked too much into it, but I didn't see anything like that just in like the main menu. You pretty much, like I said, I mean, once you level up, you just kind of unlock stuff as you go along. So I don't know if there's any way to like buy your levels or anything like that. I don't. It didn't look like it. So it looks like it's just kind of like, hey, this is our game. This is what we're gonna do. Now, Aftermath is, believe, it added some DLC to it, or at least like a level or two to the end of it. So I mean, they could potentially do more DLC, at least at the very least. And I'm assuming. See, this was kind of like kind of an all-in-one. I don't want to call it like game of the year or like special edition or anything like that, but it was just kind of like an all-in-one thing that they had put together. That's why I bought it, just because it had everything in it. So I don't know if this is kind of the end of it for now or not, but I'll definitely have to check it out. But yeah, there's definitely not any stores or anything like that. So I mean, I guess they're just going on the faith that you like the game, you just want to play it. So I'm trying to think. Actually, when I first started playing it, it looks like they do like kind of like seasonal content, because like the zombies are like wearing like like Santa coats and like a Santa hat and stuff like that. So they might do like kind of a holiday kind of goofy stuff like that. But like I said, though, I haven't seen anything where you have to you can buy skins, or the only skins there are in the game. Now I think about it, I just thought about this, is for your guns. So not even the characters have skins, at least not right now. So maybe that's something they can add on later on. Or in the next iteration, if it did well enough, I suppose. So we'll have to see. And when we play, we just try to get into just ourselves. You can have like the two AI buddies, like a 4-person team. But we have played with other people before, and usually people jump in right away. So it's got to be pretty healthy community, at least playing right now. So somewhat popular, I'm assuming. But yeah. All right. So, Mr. Hamp, let's jump into the main news right now. Headlines. Looks like you have the first story here, and a lot on a game that's coming out in 2024.
Yeah,
I have to see it.
So this story over on IGN by Ryan Dinsdale. Black Myth Wukong launches summer 2024. Developer Game Science has announced that its Chinese folklore RPG Black Myth Wukong will be released during summer 2024 in a wild new trailer. The bizarre 2-minute short film shows a young rabbit trying to install the game on an out-of-date PC before it finally falls apart and they're forced to buy another. So this is a game that has gotten some, a fair amount of buzz from when it was shown, I think at a PlayStation showcase, I think. But people are excited for this game. It looks super interesting to me in terms of its cinematic qualities and storytelling. And then hopefully it'll get the game mechanics right as well. So this is the worm in the apple in the story is, I might colloquially say that there was a thought that this game would be a first half, of Q1, Q2 of 2023. It's interesting to get a telegraphed, or I should say back half. of 2023. So it's interesting to see it get a date. Getting that 2024 date is something that requires you to watch the entire video all the way to the end. There was a point where they show a date past that, and I'm like, I thought the game was coming out in 2024. Like, what's going on? Why am I spending all this time watching this trailer? But you eventually will get the payoff in that video. You just have to stick it right up until the last minute. But the game looks to be, kind of martial arts, action adventure combat, with a very elegant presentation style, and nuance. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out.
Did they say? Did they say if this was kind of more like a Souls-like game, or is it just like more action, like 3D action game, third-person action game?
I don't remember if they said anything about it being a Souls-like game. It's there, and there's this game, and there's another game coming out which feels like it has similar subject matter. This is specifically about kind of the mythology of like the Monkey King, but the other one is, I want to say there's another like Asian historical period piece type of game that I want to say is coming out next year, but I don't remember it. I don't remember the name of it right off the top of my head.
Was this PC also, or just on PlayStation? I can't. Assuming PC too, right?
Yeah, I haven't looked it up. I'm pretty sure in the showcase they only talked about it being on PlayStation 5. But I want to say it is going to PC as well. But I'll look that up to verify that while you are when we get to your news story.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's jump into your next one. Speaking of PCs. We got a report on Kotaku about specs for games lately on the PC.
Yeah, and I'm not going to read this individual's words because I don't particularly think that the author of this article is a particularly stand-up, worthwhile individual in the game community. So, they talk a little bit about the perturbance of the force that was felt when we got the system requirements for Returnal, which, said that people, for recommended specs is, I'm going off this article, which, again, I don't particularly think this writer's articles are entirely reliable. I added this to the agenda before that altercation with that individual this week. So, but talks about recommended specs were 32 gigabytes of RAM. And I saw a lot of people in the gaming community flip out about that, but I also combine that with, the system requirements for Forspoken show for recommended Ryzen 5 3600, Radeon RX 6700 XT, and or a 3070 are the recommended specs. And then they have the ultra specs, which I won't necessarily go into detail in there entirely, but there was a sentiment about these specs being overblown, particularly when you get to the ultra. But one of the things that I'll mention, and lots of people kind of commented on this and Returnal who have more of a view that encompasses, right, the possibilities, right, than simply assuming that this is like some major impact. The recommended specs for Forspoken, as I mentioned, are an AMD Ryzen 5 3600 and a Ryzen 5 5800X. And I think there's part of the product line for Ryzen that has not been totally fulfilled in terms of all of those chips being out on, available at retail. I want to say I don't know that the 5800X has actually launched. And so I take that back. And I'm not sure if the chip is exactly the 5800X but whatever, a high-end SKU is for Ryzen. And actually that's a typo. That should be a Ryzen 7 5800X. But the point is that there's a wide swath of processors in between a Ryzen 5 3600 and a Ryzen and a Ryzen 7 5800X, right? Because you're talking about chips in two different generations of technology for AMD. You're talking about their 3000 series chips and their 5000 series chips. And if you're building a PC today, you would be probably building on their 7000 series chips. So there's a pretty wide swath here where you could run the game on anything above a Ryzen 5 3600 before you encounter the point where you're as expensive as running, a Ryzen 7 5800X. So I think this is a matter of, there are lots of people who will definitely be impacted, and lots of people who may have to make choices about what video games they're able to play. But, that's kind of always been the case, right? I mean, certainly, obviously, everybody was not able to run Crysis when it came out. Quite frankly, many people weren't able to run Crysis, 12 to 24 months after it launched, right? Still didn't have PC rigs that were powerful enough. And I think, I mean, it's on the developers and the creators to make their game in a way that as many people can play it as possible. And in this case, to get really great performance, you have to be running a PC kind of at the upper end of what either people are building now, or I mean, these are not super expensive chips at the recommended spec level. Like the Ryzen 5 3600 is an incredibly inexpensive PC. In fact, I didn't even run any PCs on 3600. My lowest CPU was a 3600X. So, I think it's a matter of specs now are being written to reflect current gen hardware, and that's flipping people out a little bit. But as I always say, there are choices you can make in here. There's a hole big enough to drive a truck through between recommended and ultra. So people are bent out of shape about the GPU. I understand that. I mean, brand new GPUs are out. Devs are probably going to target them because they think that that's the best experience for people. So, I mean, but the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 is listed at the minimum, and so it's not like if you don't have one of these cards, you can't run the game, right? These are the minimum recommended specs. They just give you enough information to make choices about what you want to do about any upgrades, or it's, sad for this developer, or you just bypass this game. Or you wait for more word to be out on the street about how well it performs on on a household rig. So
Yeah, I mean, just reading the article, I was like, I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, to me, just kind of like you said. I still play games on the Switch, and I play like Rocket League. Well, Rocket League maybe is a bad example because it's not like super, graphic intensive. But like, say Fortnite, I still play Fortnite on the Switch if I want to. Like, if more of a convenience thing to me than anything. So graphics are never like the end all be all. And I know, I got a new PC. And, I don't have like a 4000 series graphics card. I got a 3070 in there, NVIDIA RTX. So I'm still decent. I could probably still do most games on high, if not ultra, for most of the time now. So I mean, like I'm fine. Like I don't know. It's just throw some memory in there because that seems to be like the majority of his argument in this whole article was like the memory was, and it's not like memory is like super. It's not like a GPU or GPUs are expensive. Video cards are expensive. I mean, even for the 3000 series, I mean, to me at least they seem expensive to me. But memory is obviously if you have higher end stuff, it's going to be a little bit more, but it's still not like CPUs and GPUs out there. So I don't know. I don't see what the big deal is, but like I said, that's just me. I'm not a graphics guy. I don't really care. And obviously, this is more than just graphics. Obviously, if you don't have a certain thing or a certain amount of thing, it's just not going to run at all. But I mean, you can see the specs here, at least for Spoken and even for the other ones. You'll be able to run it just at a lower resolution. It's like, okay, that's fine. So, but that's just me, like I said,
Well, right. I
personally.
mean, that was the key thing I was going to bring up too. Is people should understand. The resolutions that are recommended are 1440p. 30 frames per second, 1440p under recommended, 60 frames per second at 2160. Again, kind of a large swath of performance parts and what you want to achieve. The thing that I worry about the most with this game is that it is capped at 60 frames per second, which was the case with Red Dead Redemption 2 when it came to PC. And then that just bothered me because, regardless of what you throw at the thing, regardless of how many thousands of dollars you throw at it, it's never going to do anything more than 60 frames per second. And that is an aggravating PC experience, right? I totally get it if you target 60 frames per second on console, and you worry about, whether or not everybody's machine would be able to do more than that, and that's why you don't target something higher. But on PC, you have to believe that there's a chunk of people, not the majority, that have specs similar to your recommended. And so hopefully you would just let the game run. Let the game run as fast as it possibly can, right? If I throw thousands of dollars of CPU and GPU at it, then uncork the thing and let it run. Right, don't drag me and cap me back because somebody is running, a GTX 1000 series card. Not that I have any problem with that. I just don't like it when devs make everyone play to the lowest common denominator. That's aggravating.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, you want that choice in there. So, but we'll see what happens coming up here with this game. All right, let's jump on to the last news story of the night, at least. And it is coming from GameIndustry.biz, and the article was written by Brandon Sinclair. So this is, he had an interview, or he was talking with the former game director of the original Last of Us game when it came out on the PS3. Excuse me. Bruce Straley, I believe is how you say his last name. And in the article, they're talking about how he's kind of changing his stance on maybe game gamers should, or game developers, I should say, should unionize. And this came about because of the recent HBO adaptation of The Last of Us, which he did not get any credit for within the titles or of the show, unlike I think it was the co-creators. The co-president and creative director of the original game, Neil Druckmann, received co-creator and executive producer credits on the HBO series. So obviously, you get that credit in there, but he also, I'm assuming, is probably getting a little bit of cashola because of that. And he makes that argument too, which is it's an argument for unionization. This is his quote: that someone who is part of the co-creation of that world and those characters isn't getting credit or a nickel for the work they just put into it. And he actually runs his own studio now, or is part of a studio, Wildflower Interactive now. He's a founder. Actually, he's a founder. Sorry. So this is the kind of him, talking later on now that the show's out. All these different people that I'm assuming Neil Druckmann's still there, obviously, since he got credit still. But and then just in the article, they kind of go through how just kind of there's been improper crediting for game developers. There was an issue with the Callisto Protocol recently, where about estimated 20 people didn't get any credit, even though they did leave the company before the game came out, but they were heavily into the game and had major contributions to the whole project as a whole. So, but they didn't get any kind of credit when the game came out. And then also there's another one I mentioned. I guess that was it. I thought there was another one, but yeah, that was just kind of one of the examples they had mentioned in the article. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on? I don't know. We've brought up unionization in the past, and do you think this is more him just saying, "Oh, hey, because I didn't get the money and the credit because of this." Now that the series came out, the TV series, that's why all of a sudden he bring out, or does he have a valid point where and notwithstanding the TV series, there could be other reasons, in other media that comes out where people might not get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an issue in the industry. Whether or not it's solved by unionization, I don't know. Um, so I don't. I mean, I think the sad part of the tail of the tape is this is a great example of how sometimes don't sometimes management and directors and stuff don't speak out on these issues until it personally affects them. Then all of a sudden, it's a really big deal to talk about. So, that's a thing that was kind of interesting in how this played out. But gamers should definitely, game developers should definitely get credit on games. It's how they pad their resume. It's how they're it's the first swipe about corroboration of their references, right? That they indicate is somebody looking at the credits, right, for whatever game they claim they worked on. So at the end of the day, people need to be credited for the work that they've done. Whether or not these vehicles will get that done, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm definitely supportive of people getting the credit they deserve.
Yeah, and the one thing with me, and maybe I don't fully understand how a union would work or works currently, and how it would work regarding this, but he didn't really mention like why being in a union would help him in that case. Do the unions just like if you're in your union, does it just lock down like all rights or something like that? And then I don't know if you know that answer either, but I was just kind of wondering what if there was a union, like how that would actually help him out or help whoever out, get the credit or the payment they deserve.
Yeah, the only thing that I think that they could do is, they would just be able to bargain collectively on behalf of the employees. So first of all, just by bringing the topic up and being a key organization who would have a voice with the publisher rather than counting on an individual developer to walk it up the chain and it forever, for it to ever be paid attention to and change being implemented. And then I think, whatever regime they agreed to, right, with that game company, they would obviously, move to replicate that around to, other publishers that they had those relationships with.
Right. All right. So let's jump in to the rest of the games we've been playing this past week. And Hemp, you're up first. Got a little Halo on the PC that you've been doing.
Yeah, sorry. So I've been continuing to play Halo Infinite despite the layoffs that occurred at Microsoft early this week. Some of which directly impacted the 343 Industries. 343 Industries was obviously a cost center that consumes a vast amount of money for a team that I think under the Microsoft umbrella they would be the largest team. And so, to be enduring that type of cost and consumption, from a group that is not generating revenue right now, I could see where there was a mathematical, quantifiable decision, right, that said, hey, a number of cuts should come from this place over here. But regardless, I've still had fun playing Halo Infinite. They instituted a new thing that is, I don't know, I call it the winner plus pass. So they obviously, came up with a 33 tier, short-term battle pass for their winter update, which dropped, I want to say, the very, very tail end of November, maybe the first week or so of December. And so that's provided additional content for people to kind of, orient around the chase and the grind for. But the other thing that I did was one of the things I got this week is a 34-inch ultra wide 3440 by 1440p monitor. And I've still been kind of working out, doing some verification of the PC, the new PC that I built deliberately, and the other PC, actually the one that I'm on right now, that I had to just finally repair from the hack job that CyberPower PC had done. But I got that ultra widescreen monitor, and one of the things that a friend had told me was that no Halo Infinite has implemented a resolution support for kind of widescreen monitors. So I wanted to go in and definitely kind of check that out, and I did, and it looks great. So, so all of that has given me enough reason to go in and play Halo Infinite on PC.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the hubbubaloo, if you will, right before the weekend hit. Kind of going into the weekend with there being a rumor that Halo was moving away from, I guess, 343, and that was kind of squashed. So I saw today that as far as we know, so far as they know, they're going to continue working on the game and get content out there. So just kind of a weird thing I saw on Friday, I think, or maybe even early Saturday.
Yeah, there's been rumors that that the work was just going to be taken from 343i and given to some other studio. Sometimes discussion of whether or not that new studio would stand up inside the Activision division that is Call of Duty right now under Johanna Faries. And then a very short email, blog post, whatever you want to call it, that came out that said, hey, we're continuing to make Halo, now and forever. So there's not a lot there right now today. There's not a lot in Halo Infinite to warrant playing the game if what you're looking for is battle pass content and skins and cosmetics. The Halo Infinite that exists today is an awesome thing to go play with. If you have some tight knit friends who also play the game, and you guys can squad up. It has some of the what to me is kind of the best gameplay amongst multiplayer shooters, the best gunplay amongst multiplayer shooters right now. And PvP, and so if that's what you're looking for, to be, this is the game to play. Now, if you need rewards, you're probably not going to get a lot of those that you actually might feel are worthwhile. But there it is.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to jump into my game. One other game that I've been playing that I actually just jumped into the last couple of days was I went back to Knockout City, which was the 3-on-3. Well, usually 3-on-3. Sometimes there's, I think, a 4-on-4, maybe 5-on-5 game mode, but 3-on-3 dodgeball kind of arena. I won't say shooter, but arena game. So there's you got regular dodgeballs that you can throw at people, and obviously you can catch them. And there's usually like special balls, like they have like a cage ball where if you actually hit the person with it, it'll like lock them in this kind of like ball cage, and then you can kind of like throw it off the map and kill them or get the point. So, and then there's other like boomerang balls, and there's all kinds of different other special balls that they'll put on the maps. Usually, I think there's only usually one special ball a match, so it's not like too crazy. So it's just all the regular balls that you can get around the match or around the level, and then just that one special ball. So it's pretty fun. I had played it when it first came out, I think last year, maybe a year and a half ago, for quite a while, and then it kind of fell off it just because other things came up, and then I just every once in a while I might jump into a match. But last couple days though, I've been really kind of going back and playing it. There was a weird thing though. I was playing on the Switch, and so I had to re-download it because I had to uninstall it a while ago. I reinstalled it, and it actually asked for an Epic account, which I thought was kind of weird. Like I didn't think that developer had got bought by them, or I don't know if it's, and I didn't get a chance to look at it beforehand, but I just thought it was kind of weird that I needed an Epic account to get into there, and which is fine because I have an Epic account, but I also had a bunch of stuff that I had unlocked previously, and that stuff seems to be gone. So I don't know if I have to go like into my Epic account and maybe like sync up the account or something. So I have to look into that a little bit more. And it wasn't like a whole lot. Like I think I might have bought one battle pass at one point. I might have finished the whole thing or got at least like 3/4 of the way through it. So I had a good bit of stuff. So it kind of stinks if I didn't lose it. But I mean, it's a $10 battle pass just like everything else. So kind of sucks. But I'll have to check that out to see what actually happened there. So and why you need that account from them. But I'll continue playing it. I actually just downloaded my PC too just a little while ago before the podcast. So I'll play it on there and see what's going on. All right, so Hemp, we're going to finish us off here with a game you had mentioned earlier, Knights of Honor 2.
So before I talk about that a little bit,
Oh yeah,
so the problem with Knockout City to me was there aren't a ton of concurrent players playing it right now. So what did you see of that? And was this just kind of a whimsical experiment, or are you actually planning on pulling Knockout City into kind of your regular PvE rotation, right? And spending some chunk of time on it during the week while you're in between like Fortnite and Call of Duty.
yeah. I think I'm going to put it in the rotation right now, or at least for now. I'm going to see what goes on here in the next week or so. Um, and yeah, I don't. It was kind of weird though that whole situation with my account kind of happened, which, like I said, kind of stinks that I lost that stuff. But and I don't know. I think originally they were published by, I think it was EA. I can't remember. I have to go back and look. And I know that relationship went away, and they kind of were on their own, um, doing their own thing. So I don't know if, like I said, like if they hitched up to the Epic now, or if just for some reason you need an Epic account. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but I have to find that out and dig in a little more. And I mean, I enjoyed it. I haven't had any issues finding a game so far when I've been playing. I pretty much get into a match right away. So it seems like it's there's people at least still playing it somewhat. So, and I know like on the Switch, you can kind of in your news feed, you can kind of like pick and choose, like enable and disable like news feeds. And I just left Knockout City in there, and they've been having like different seasons. Like I think they had like a movie season at one point, and right now it's kind of like old timey kind of noir kind of a season, and they actually have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kind of crossover in their not the battle pass, but just like in their store where you can buy the different skins of the turtles, and then I think it was Rocksteady and Bebop, the boar and the, I forget, Rhino I think is the other guy. So you can buy those skins, which was kind of weird because I never saw like a full like modded skin. It's usually just like clothing that they had before. So it's kind of nice that they have those kind of things going on now. So I'll have to see how that goes. I don't think I'm gonna get a battle pass right now. Probably just play. They have free tiers obviously, just like in every other battle pass. So I'll probably just keep working on that for now. We'll see how if it hooks me like it had hooked me before, and I really get back into it. Probably after this week or two. We'll see.
So one of the reasons why I asked that question is, I mean, Knockout City is clearly and unquestionably a game that's on the decline. The number of concurrent players is only going to get smaller, and eventually it's going to get worse. You're making a choice similar to the choice I made, taking the risk at plunging into Anthem at the time that I did. And we were listening to EA's company line that they were going to, start, focusing on Anthem and start to invest money in Anthem. And I chose to push the I believe button on that and got into Anthem like hardcore. I was, super happy to start collecting, stuff for, my armor and whatnot. And, within a couple of weeks of making that choice, right, they came out with the announcement that they were going to shut everything down. So I mean, are there triggers and thresholds that would cause you to get off? I'm just curious kind of how you're thinking about like your personal investment of time in a game that is unquestionably like on its way out the window.
It's a good question because I mean, I guess I never really thought about it before. Like if I guess for now, I mean, I'll just stick with it just because, I mean, obviously the servers are still up and running and, there's still, I mean, it's still content. But like I said, I'm not going to be buying the battle pass right now or anything. So I'll just kind of continue going on with it. So what I looked up real quick actually while you were talking. So they moved from the EA Origin Online services to the Epic Online services. That's probably why it switched over to um, the Epic account. Um, so hopefully, and it looks like you can do a one-time migration. So I'll probably just have to go into Epic and get that stuff back. But yeah, I mean, unless I can't find a match anymore, that would probably be the only reason. Maybe I'll just totally like say, okay, I'm done with this. Like, I don't want to play it. And I guess that kind of brings to memory actually Spellbound, which was another game that I had been playing, which was a battle royale. Where it was more magic and kind of melee-ish combat, kind of different from like the regular shooters that I do. That like totally ceased like altogether. Like they said they're winding down. They're not going to make the game or um, develop anything for the game anymore. And I think they got absorbed into an Activision studio, if I remember correctly. Probably Call of Duty, more than likely. So that's pretty much what all happens to most of those studios. I think that Activision had bought them out, and this was before like the Microsoft thing. So and then with that one, I was like, okay, like they're done. Like they're done. They said they were done. They're not going to do anything after like a certain date, whatever it was. And I just kind of stopped playing that game too. So, but like I said, as long as this one's still, the servers are still going and people are still on, I'll continue to keep playing away. All right, you want to talk to us about? I forgot the name of the game now. Knights of Honor 2. Sorry.
Yeah, so this is the game that I will say, I may not be able to comment about whether or not I've been having more fun in it than Fire Emblem Engage. That jury is still out for me to play some more time Engage, but I will say there have been more pages of fanfic that have been written in my head about Knights of Honor 2 than I'm writing about Fire Emblem Engage right now, which, and then we go back to, your question about, do you play a canned character or is it your own character? Fire Emblem Engage, it's a canned character, right? Which, I've recently written about how, look, I get and I understand and I accept the value of story, right? And the position that occupies in the gaming community on social media and how the need to meet that demand resonates with developers. But, I've always preferred the type of game that's an open sandbox and allows me to kind of write the narrative of any given campaign, again, kind of in my head, right? Rather than having it dictated to me, by the game. So that's what I have in Knights of Honor 2, which is, as I mentioned last week, is a total, open sandbox, conquer the world approach. There is no other scenario type, right? It's conquer the world. Now there are different win conditions, and you can set those yourself. When you bring up a given scenario, and so for me, as I mentioned last week, I put the thing on random and just let it pick a country for me, and it gave me England. And so, I have, I'm on my third king now. I've experienced 2 periods of rule. My second king wound up coming to the throne fairly late because the first king lived so long. The third king that I have on the throne now is actually not English by birth, so I don't know. That's one thing I'll say. It's when it doesn't necessarily the game doesn't do a great job of kind of keeping a history that you can go back and look at if you kind of miss how did this Scot become the king of England. I think he's the son of a daughter of my first king who was married off to a Scottish royal. And so, because my second king didn't have a male heir, I think it wound up going to this guy. But the story of the campaign that I'm running now is, we've been engaged in wars with Ireland. There's a lot of bad blood between our two peoples. And I've had Dublin, the city of Dublin, under siege twice. And each time, while engaged in a siege with Dublin, I have been approached by the French, who want me to get engaged in a land war on the continent. And each time, my round table of knights, which now numbers, I think I have 8 knights now, have recommended that I do support the French in their next war, which has been frustrating because I'm like, guys, do you guys not see that we already have a war going on over here in Ireland? And in fact, I think I mentioned last week how at a point where I only had 6 knights, they were evenly split at one point. I think the first time France came to us about joining them in war, and they were actually split down the middle, 3 and 3. And I had to kind of sort through, the experiences and the accomplishments and the type of advice and counsel that I gotten from each of those NPCs, and decide which ones I trusted the most to make my decision about going to war with France then. But every time the French come to us about a war when we're already engaged in one, that means I have to withdraw troops from, whatever operation and campaign they're engaged in. I have to send them, those generals, home with those troops. I have to reconstitute those armies. I have to, hire new squads to add to them, and then resort my logistics, and then have them deploy again, right, to the continent, which is not a particularly friendly place for the English to be, given that we have no logistics support on that continent. So all of this is to say that, obviously, from the way I've kind of described it, there's a ton of detail and depth and nuance in this game. There's logistics, there's managing your royal family, there's diplomacy, there's, marrying off sons and daughters to different, lines of royalty around the European the European theater. One of the things that has gone on during this time is, when the first king died, I had, I think the oldest daughter had been married off to a Flemish royal. And so Flanders actually asserted that they were entitled to Canterbury and Exeter when the first king died. And so I had a war that I had to contend with the Flemish, because they felt that they were due, those 2 provinces, based on a line of succession that in my mind didn't exist. So, I had to go to war with the Flemish, and actually had to, at a point, deploy troops to the continent to take them on, and actually took over control of a Flemish settlement, Bruges, which most recently I gave back to the Flemish out of the goodness of my heart, because now I've got to go to war with the French, and I just didn't feel like I had time. I didn't have enough, brain cycles to keep up with that settlement, which was constantly rebelling. It was constantly a problem. So again, I go back to my point being, tons of detail, causes you to kind of imagine and think about like what your campaign is, right, in terms of the history. I'm sure everybody is going to play it differently. I actuate on, things that have happened, and that, emotionally, and that often like drives how I respond. The first time we went to war with the Irish was because of an alliance that we had with a clan on the Irish continent. And one of the things that came out of that, I think I mentioned last week, was that my king was imprisoned. And he eventually escaped. Actually, one of my knights, who's also a spy, who I deployed to the Irish continent, was able to do a covert jailbreak, which is a thing that you could do in the game. Which I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. So but that has stuck with me, right? And actually, it's been in my mind that I'm always going to be at war with the Irish. Like it's until I exact my vengeance for them imprisoning my king, like that's going to be a thing. And so, again, this amazing amount of depth. The one knock I have on the game so far is that the art, it has an RTS mode similar to Total War, to the Total War series. And so, when it's strategic mostly as you maneuver, armies and stuff around the map and make decisions about, trade and diplomacy, and other things. But then when you get armies that engage in combat, you can actually go into RTS mode and zoom into the battlefield. And so I apologize. We got one viewer in the room, Bobo Country, who actually frequents the Basement Radio Arcade podcast, which I used to be a main cast member on. So thanks a lot, Borbor, for supporting the live stream and stopping by. We appreciate you. And so, and when I played that game, and of course I'm playing this game on Linux, when I was drawn in, typically in Total War, I always want to fight the battles myself in RTS mode. I saw a lot of graphical artifacts, just kind of this really whited out kind of background for the landscape, for the ground area. And I don't know if that was like a Linux bug and a Radeon GPU bug. So I need to play this game on PC as well to pull the thread on that and see if that was a Linux artifact. But now when armies engage, I just stay up at the zoomed out kind of global view, and I let the AI kind of fight those battles out. But my point of this is an incredible level of detail. For anybody who's a super history nut, one of my it's really funny. One of my areas of focus in undergrad was early diplomacy on the European continent in like the 11th and 12th century, and so this has given me a chance to kind of go back to that. Like I said, I'm playing Fire Emblem Engage, and I'm just playing that game, right, experiencing it in the gaming world. But in this game is causing me to dive into lots of web articles, right, and look for books about kind of the time period in the history and look up, lots of historical figures and things that had gone on in diplomacy and whatnot during this time period. So it's kind of rekindled and kicked off that type of interest as well. So it's been a wonderful experience. I've spent about 15 hours in the game so far, which exceeds time that I spend in a lot of AAA first-party games, right, on console or AAA titles, even on PC. And so it's just kind of proof positive that at least for me, there are things that stimulate me that draw me outside of kind of what is on the front page of Metacritic. So it's been a good time. It's I'm glad to see other developers kind of doing like the Crusader King shtick and the type of games that Paradox Entertainment makes, and makes these kind of grand strategy 4X games. So it's been a good time. I've really enjoyed it.
So when you're in that zoomed out mode that you're playing, are you? So you don't have to really do anything, like you said, the AI just kind of controls everything. Are you more worried about than before you go into the battles and say, hey, I want bump up experience in this? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, you just when I say I let the AI fight the battles, right? So when I maneuver an army into an engagement with another army, I don't zoom in and take personal control at the squad level of moving pieces around on the battlefield. But up at that zoom, so when I'm up at that zoomed out level, so just like in Total War, if I went down to that squad level view, the rest of the game world outside of that, time would just stand still, right? So, trade, diplomacy, spies out on missions, ongoing diplomatic actions between all of the other countries in the world, and wartime engagements in all the other countries of the world, and units right sailing across the ocean. All that stuff would go into freeze while I was fighting that engagement. So because I don't do that, that fight goes on, but the clock keeps running on the rest of the world, right? And so, while that fight's going on, I could get like a diplomatic communique from like another country, right? And I might pause the game so I can go see what that thing is. I may get an offer to marry, right, one of my children off, right? So all that stuff is still going on. Versus, like I said, when you go into the RTS view, all that stuff kind of comes to a stop, and when you pop out of that view, then you're back up at that upper level view, and that stuff is going on. So,
and it's been running fairly well on the Linux machine, no issues.
Yeah, it's not a resource intensive game. I have in that box I have an ASRock Challenger Pro, which is a Radeon 6700, which is a Radeon RX 6700 XT card. So it's kind of the equivalent of like a 3070. From where AMD positions it, right? Not necessarily by capability or price. But it's at that point in the SKU stack for AMD, and it's a triple fan arrangement. And when I'm playing the game, the fans don't even run. So right, it's not taxing the GPU enough for it to even kick up to the temperature where the fans would run. So yeah, but so yes, it's running completely fine.
Have you tried anything else out on the Linux machine?
Not yet. I not at any length. I have had Red Dead Redemption 2 installed on it, and played some of that. I'm trying to think if I've had anything else kind of. I have Deep Rock Galactic on that, and it plays that fine. So I just recently, I had Deus Ex Mankind Divided, and then I uninstalled it. But yeah, I mean the box runs fine. I've been super impressed, and that's why I keep going back to, as we had in the article earlier tonight, right? The person was complaining about high PC specs and what it takes to run games, and I understand that. I understand that a Linux box isn't necessarily going to be able to run every single game that's out there, but a Linux box will definitely run the vast majority of games that are out there on Steam, at least. And so I would say, if you're trying to sidestep costs, build a Linux box and go grab a Radeon GPU from the previous generation, because I mean, prices on Radeon GPUs really only stay up in like the current generation, and then once the old generation is superseded, like those prices drop pretty far down. So if you're trying to build on a budget, if you're trying to build on an NVIDIA card, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to fit within the old, budget standard of a $500 box. But you could do that, if you build around a Radeon card and run Linux.
So I've never really messed with Linux before. So are the games out there? Are they optimized for Linux, or are they just kind of work?
They just work. I mean, so
they just work, okay.
Yeah. So game optimization is typically around hardware, and the APIs that are going to run for the games that so you have two options. You're either going to run a Windows version of the executable and run it on top of Proton, which is an additional abstraction layer to communicate with the hardware. So you're not going to be running one-to-one from an optimization perspective. And so you're probably going to get a certain degree of imperfection. You're going to maybe get some wonkiness, right, in an animation here and there, or just smooth frame rate here and there. But by and large, what I feel like you typically see is like a 10 frame per second delta between what you might otherwise see on PC on a Windows PC. Your other option is that you will be running native Linux games, which there are a ton of those in the Steam store as well. And so you'll have the option, right? And once you're running on a native Linux game, I haven't seen like a huge horrible amount of difference between game performance on a Linux box versus on a PC.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to the end of the show. Any other comments on anything for tonight? News, games? No? All right. Next week, episode 275 will be hosted by Mr. Hemp, and I should be there, and hopefully DB will be back with us. So please join us then. I think that's it for tonight. I thought it was going to be a short one, but I guess not. As usual, I am wrong. We always have stuff to talk about, so that's cool. It's always good. All right, Hemp, thanks for joining me for tonight. I am Towmaster99. Please come back next week, next Sunday, or whenever afterwards, when the video goes up, or if you want to listen to it on audio, we do have that option too. Please take care of each other out there and play those games. We will see you next time.